Copyright, University of South Australia. This recording may contain third-party copyright material. Apart from any use permitted under the Copyright Act 1968, no part of this recording may be reproduced or rebroadcast by any means or process without the prior written permission of the University of South Australia and the copyright owners.
Hi, and welcome back. What we're going to do now is we're going to have a look at the cranial nerves. So in general, what are the cranial nerves? If we make a comparison of them when compared to those which we have learned from the lumbar plexus or the brachial plexus, we know that those nerves, they emerge from the cervical vertebrae for the brachial plexus or the lumbar vertebrae for the lumbosacral plexus, and then they go to innervate your limbs. The difference is here that a lot of these cranial nerves are responsible for your special senses or your head. So they emerge from the brain or the brain stem, and therefore we still call them peripheral nerves. So we know that the central nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord, whereas now that they are emerging from the brain or the brain stem, they're going to go towards the periphery to innervate the tissue, and therefore they are peripheral nerves. Now, most of these cranial nerves carry parasympathetic supply. So, as an example, number 3, which we'll talk about shortly, that will go to constrict the pupils. And we know that constriction of the pupils is controlled by your parasympathetic nervous system, and then that is therefore carrying parasympathetic nervous innervation. Number 10, this one will give parasympathetic innervation to your heart, to your lungs, and to your digestive system. So our vagus nerve is really responsible for our day-to-day processes like digestion and setting a heart rate and how many times you breathe a minute. So your cranial nerves, there are 12 of them, and we need to know all 12 of these, please. What I would expect you to know is that are you able to identify and tell me the number of each one of these cranial nerves, and what is their name, and what is their basic function. I wouldn't expect you to label a picture like this, but be able to write it in some sort of table form. So our cranial nerves, as we said, are peripheral nerves which emerge from the brain or the brainstem. Now we use Roman numerals to number these. That's just the way that it's done. Alright, so in your exam, as an example, you might see a table which is like this, and it has IV and then X, and then it says name and function. So you would need to be able to recognize what the number is, so IV being 4 or X being 10, tell us the name of the nerve and tell us the function of the nerve, not to be able to label on a picture like this, but this is going to help us remember. So let's start with cranial nerve 1. Now there's a bit of a story behind this as well. We can use either a mnemonic to help us remember your cranial nerves, or you can use a bit of a story. Totally up to you. If we talk about the mnemonic of it, so we go O, 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 to touch and feel very good velvet are heaven. These are our cranial nerves. So from there, that's the name. And then we have a general function, which would be either sensory, some of them are only sensory, motor, some of them are only motor, or both. Now if we put a letter next to each one of these, then we've got another mnemonic, which would be some say marry money, but my brother says big brains matter most. So this tells us that cranial nerve 1 is going to be a sensory nerve. Cranial nerve 2 is going to be a sensory nerve. Cranial nerve 3 is a motor nerve. Cranial nerve 4 is motor. Cranial nerve 5 is both. Cranial nerve 6 is motor. 7 is both. 8 sensory, 9, both, 10, both, 11 is a motor, and 12 is a motor. So what you can see here is I've used I's as a single, as a 1, V as a 5, and X as a 10. So if you put it beforehand, it's 1 before 5, so it's 4. And if you put 3 after, which is the maximum number of single digits you can have after, it would make 8. So 5, 6, 7, 8. And then here you can see X is 10, so 1 before X, making 9. So what you can say here as well is that the first S stands for smell. Alright, so this is going to help us remember the functions of these, very basic ones. Alright, so it would be not enough to write this in the exam, but follow what we're going to do on this next page. Then sight, alright, is the next one. This one moves the eyes. This one moves the eyes. This one helps you to bite. Alright, we'll talk about the more detailed version in a minute. Then this one here moves the eyes. Okay, this one, if we remember bitter, alright, then that's going to be something to do with taste and facial expression. So can you make a bitter face? Yes, well done. This one, alright, is sound. So that's just something to do with your ears, so hearing. Then we can think back of mouth for this one. So we think the throat, alright. This one, number 10, your vagus nerve, alright, it is a nerve which controls lots of processes. Alright, so we can't really use a B for this, alright, but we'll come back to that shortly for this one. A, this one here is muscles of the neck, which we'll describe shortly, and then the final one is muscles of the tongue. So remembering that, writing this down on your blank piece of paper in the exam will really help you get through these things. But I would like you to know slightly more detailed function, please. So let's start with each one of them. Number 1 is our olfactory nerve. Alright, and this one, its function is smell. Alright, so we can write that. That's very basic. And we can see this big part here. Alright, cranial nerve 1 are these first long set that you get here. Now the good thing about the cranial nerves on the base of the brain is that they follow a pattern 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 in series. So it helps us label these ones correctly. So the function of this one is smell. Number 2, we have the optic nerve. So when we said vision or sight before, that's what this does. It brings sensation through from the eyes towards the brain. Alright, so this one here is number 2. And what I'm colouring in here, you can actually notice is a bit of a cross. Alright, so what's interesting is that part of your eye is actually taken to the opposite side of your brain. So your peripheral vision actually is understood by the opposite side of your brain, which is pretty cool. So this is for vision, or visual sensations. Number 3 is the oculomotor. Alright? Now the oculomotor nerve, as we said before, is for moving the eyes. Now, I don't expect you to know the names of the muscles specifically, but if you do, it's very good to know. Alright? So it can give you some extra bonus marks in the exam. So these ones little guys here, the 2 of them there, they are number 3, alright, the oculomotor nerve. So what it will do is it will move your eyes up, so look towards the ceiling, it will move your eyes down, look towards the floor. Then what it's also going to do is it will make you go cross-eyed, so look at at your nose or follow your finger towards your face. And then it will also make you look up and in. So imagine that something would be between your eyebrows at the top of your nose and you're trying to look up and see it. This one then will also create pupillary constriction, and lens control. So when you need to see far or close, this would be understanding the lens control. Alright? So pupillary constriction, lens control, looking up, looking down, looking in, looking up and in. That is cranial nerve 3. Cranial nerve 4 we call the trochlear. Alright, so the trochlear nerve is the next little one in the series, just this little guy here. It is on both sides, but I just haven't drawn it on this side for you. So cranial nerve 4. So IV. The trochlear nerve controls one eye muscle, and that one eye muscle is called your superior oblique, and it actually makes your eyes look down and in, like towards the tip of your nose. Or imagine that you are walking downstairs. So the muscle, its name is the superior oblique muscle of the eye. So I'd like you to remember that one. The next one, number 5, we call the trigeminal. Now the trigeminal nerve is very special. It's a very big nerve which emerges from the front side of one part of your brainstem called the pons. Alright, and it was the first one that we had, which is a both nerve, if you remember from what we just wrote. So your trigeminal nerve, it will do sensory of the face, teeth, tongue, and the gums. So pain, touch, temperature, even spicy would be understood by this one. Alright? And then its motor function, so S and M, its motor function is the muscles for chewing. So if we remember what we said about the previous list, when we used B, we wrote bite. So you can remember that you've got your muscles of chewing for biting, and it would hurt that if you bit your tongue. Alright, so if you bit your tongue, you would feel the sensation, or if you bit the inside of your cheek, you would feel the sensation. Alright, so scratching your face and biting your tongue would give you sensation. So we know the trigeminal nerve is for muscles of chewing and for the sensory of the face. So here, it's this very big one here. Now it's got 3 branches. That makes sense then of its name, trigeminal. Alright, where this first branch here goes and does the sensation above your eyes. The second branch here does the sensation of your cheeks, and the third really big branch here does the sensation of your lower jaw, the inside of your mouth, your teeth, and your tongue. Alright, so this big one is cranial nerve 5, or the trigeminal nerve. Cranial nerve 6, we have the abducens. Now the good thing about this word abducens is it's kind of like abduct. So what it will do is it will abduct your eyes through a muscle we call the lateral rectus muscle of the eye. So look right, look left. If you look right, you'd be using your right abducens nerve and your left oculomotor nerve. If you look left, you'll be using your left abducens nerve and your right oculomotor nerve. So we know that the oculomotor nerve does adduction of the eyes and the abducens nerve does abduction of the eyes. Just try that. Take both of your eyes apart at the same time. Yeah, you can't do it, can you? Right? So only when you look left and when you look right would you ever use those muscles. Cranial nerve 7. Alright, sorry, we just need to colour in the abducens nerve. So it's this one here on the front, this little guy down here. Alright, abducens. Cranial nerve 7 is our facial nerve. Now, a lot of people seem to get the facial nerve and the trigeminal nerve mixed up. Alright, so it's really important that we don't. Alright, now that I've said it, you probably will, but try very hard to distinguish the difference between the trigeminal nerve and the facial nerve, please. So the facial nerve, number 7, what it will do the muscles of facial expression. So if you smile, if you frown, if you lift your eyebrows, if you blink, if you move your nostrils, if you move your ears, all of these muscles are controlled by your facial nerve. And then what is its sensory function? Its sensory function will be for taste. So what did we say before is that we had the B and we used the word bitter. Right, so we're seeing that. So if we tasted something bitter, then we would make a bitter face. Alright, so don't write that one in the exam, but understand that if you were to taste something bitter, you might screw up your face, like you've seen a child eat a lemon before. So it's helping you understand or remember the facial nerve does taste and muscles of facial expression. Number 8, we call our acoustic, or its long name, starting with a V, is vestibulocochlear, where the vestibulo part is for balance and the cochlear part is for hearing. Alright, so inside the temporal bone of the skull we have two small apparatus. One is called the semicircular canals, and fluid would flow through there, and that's how we get our balance. So that's why when you spin around in circles you feel dizzy afterwards. The cochlea looks like a small snail, and the sound waves pass through this until you understand what you're hearing. So just below number 7, here then this one, number 8, the vestibulocochlear or the acoustic or auditory nerve. Vestibulocochlear is the better name, please. Number 8. Number 9, IX, is glossopharyngeal. Now I know this one might sound hard, but the word glosso means tongue, and the word pharyngeal is of your pharynx. So we said it's both nerve, again. It only innervates one muscle, and I don't expect you to know the name of that muscle. But what it would also do is it would do some taste on the posterior 1/3 of the tongue. So if you've ever had red wine before and you notice that taste right at the back of your throat, that's the sensory part of the glossopharyngeal nerve associated with the back of the tongue. It also then does sensory to the throat. Alright, so the pharynx, if you will. And what that is actually the afferent portion for swallowing and coughing reflexes. So if you were to accidentally inhale a fly or something and then you cough it back up, you've got the sensory part of the glossopharyngeal nerve doing this. And then that's just the next one in series. So you can see that we're just going down through the list. So number 9 here. No real hard guesses to see that then the next big one is going to be number 10. And number 10 is our vagus nerve. Alright, so the vagus nerve gets its name from the word vagabond, whereby we have then the meaning of wanderer. Alright, so vagus nerve, because it wanders through the body. And this one's primarily got parasympathetic output. Now what I mean by that, and why it's important to remember, is because it does digestion, it will do heart rate, it will do ventilation, and also control your bronchioconstriction. So all of these things are to do with being at rest. Alright, is our vagus nerve. It will also do the muscles of the throat. So we said that the glossopharyngeal nerve does the sensory of the throat. It'll be the vagus then which communicates with this one to actually be the efferent for swallowing and coughing. Number 11 and number 12 are next. So here, it's actually this long one that we can see, which is number 11, emerging just above, right here. And 11 is our spinal accessory nerve, which will innervate two muscles of the neck, and they're called sternocleidomastoid, which we'll learn about, and the trapezius, which we have already learnt about. Right, so these two muscles are innervated by the spinal accessory nerve. And last but not least is we have the hypoglossal nerve. Sorry, I've only got black left. Right, this large one here on the front, number 12, is called our hypoglossal. So we said before that the word glossus meant tongue, so the hypoglossal nerve will control muscles of the tongue. So every time you speak, every time you eat, every time you curl your tongue in half or twist it or move it around inside your mouth, it would be your hypoglossal nerve, which is innervating it. So just to go back through, in blue, up here we had facial, then it was our acoustic or vestibulocochlear nerve that we drew in orange. The next one in series was our glossopharyngeal. Then we had our vagus, spinal accessory, and hypoglossal nerves. Now these 12 cranial nerves are therefore very important for the function of your face, your eyes, your ears, and your special senses. Alright, so have a go at filling that out yourself, and we'll talk about it in class. Thanks.